Hey there. Probably by the 2020s and certainly by the 2030s, the competition between the United States and China will really start to heat up. It's unclear what this will look like, but we should be trying really hard to define those terms today. This competition will definitely include heavy-handed diplomatic efforts across all 7 continents and fierce competitions for economic and technological advantage. We really don't want this competition to be military. If it is, it will be a tragedy for the world and a tragedy for the US and China as well. Over the first couple decades of US war on terror idiocy, China was content to sit on the sidelines. This is very unlikely to be true of the third or fourth decades. As the new national security strategy, released this January, makes clear, the Pentagon now assumes that it's just going to keep those absurd budgets and all those bases it was given to fight terror and use all those resources to play great power games everywhere from South America to Africa and the Asian seas. If we continue on this infantile path, China is very likely to try to challenge us. The history of great power competition in the late 19th century shows this. Germany had a couple brutally mismanaged African colonies. Not because they were at all useful to Germany, but because the British had African colonies. And China has the potential to be a lot more powerful than Germany ever was. 2017 saw the release of the film Wolf Warrior 2 in China.
You know, they say violence never solves anything. It sure is fun.
It became the most popular film in Chinese history, and it's a rousing story of a plucky humanitarian Chinese special forces guy battling evil US imperialists in Africa. This hasn't happened in reality yet, but there's no reason it couldn't. China already has a large anti-piracy force operating off the coast of Africa. Who could object to their opening some humanitarian bases in Somalia? After all, don't the Somali people deserve to have their sufferings alleviated? Of course, it would just be a small detail that this would involve Chinese military bases on one of the world's largest trading routes. That would just be a small bonus. For decades, the United States has been the only country powerful enough to mask its geopolitical goals with semi-plausible humanitarian justifications. It has been one of our most important advantages. That will be over by the 2020s. China already has one African base in Djibouti. The United States has been stepping up its military involvement all over the continent. We only got the vaguest sense of the extent of this involvement when we learned that 4 US soldiers, acting in an advisory capacity, died in a heated battle in Niger in October 2017. I wouldn't be surprised if we see proxy wars in Africa between the United States and China by 2030. This will all be completely pointless, of course. It doesn't have to happen this way, and we can still change our path, but it was US policy in places like Iraq and Syria that set this tone. And we haven't even paid for it yet. All of these wars from the past 17 years have just been added to the national debt. The story of the 21st century is likely to be one of competition between China and the United States. And we have started out by putting this on a military frame and going massively into debt to do it. We've started a marathon with a sprint. This channel is dedicated, in part, to trying to stuff that particular genie back into the bottle. But it may already be too late. What's important now, whether we are headed back into the era of great power competition or not, is to make less mistakes than the other guy. History tells us exactly what these mistakes look like. From the US in Iraq, to the Soviets in Afghanistan, to the US Vietnam, to the Axis powers in Africa, all the way back to the British Boer War in South Africa in the early 1900s, it's a question of not committing to pointless wars. If you want to be smart, you don't want to commit to one of these moron wars. You want to get the other guys to overcommit. At the moment in the United States, a lot of people are trying to convince the US government to put more money and more troops into Syria. This is nuts. In the name of decency and common humanity, we should never have been involved in Syria. But forget all that. Getting out of Syria as soon as possible could very well be, ultimately, a question of survival for the US world system. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe, and if you'd like to help me keep trying to make the world a little bit less nuts, you can click on the Patreon link here to find out how. Thanks.